of the next 6 months and probably the next year, find occasions where you say, you know what, that could have been done a little bit better, or that thing, they're kind of making an administrative change. That's not how it was originally thought this thing was going to work. Yes, exactly. Because our goal is to actually deliver high-quality, affordable health care for people and to reform the system so costs start going down and people start getting a better bang for the buck. And I make no apologies for that. And let me just make one last point about this. The idea that you would shut down the government unless you prevent 30 million people from getting health care is a bad idea. What you should be thinking about is how can we advance and improve ways for middle-class families to have some security so that if they work hard, they can get ahead and their kids can get ahead. Jessica Yellen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And following on what you just said, Republicans in the House might give you that choice soon to either allow the government to shut down or see Obamacare defunded. Would you choose to let the government shut down to ensure that Obamacare remains funded?
Well, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I can tell you that the American people would have difficulty understanding why we would weaken our economy, shut down our government, shut down vital services, have people who are not getting paid, who then can't go to restaurants or shop for clothes or all the other things that we're doing here because Republicans have determined that they don't want to see these folks get health care. Again, they used to say they had a replacement. That never actually arrived, right? I mean, I've been hearing about this whole replace thing for 2 years now. I just don't hear about it because basically they don't have an agenda to provide health insurance to people at affordable rates. And the idea that you would shut down the government at a time when the recovery is getting some traction, where we're growing, although not as fast as we need to, where the housing market is recovering, although not as fast as we would like, that we would precipitate another crisis here in Washington that no economist thinks is a good idea. I'm assuming that they will not take that path. I have confidence that common sense in the end will prevail.
And if they do, sir, you have to make that choice.
We'll see what happens. We got a couple of months.
When's the last time you spoke to Speaker Boehner about the budget?
Fairly recently. Yeah, probably right before they left. Okay. Scott Horsley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Part of the political logic behind immigration reform was the strong showing by Latino voters last November. Yeah. That doesn't seem to resonate with a lot of House Republicans who represent overwhelmingly white districts. Mm-hmm. What other political leverage can you bring to bear to help move a bill in the House?
Well, we've got an economic report that shows that our economy would be $1 trillion stronger if we get immigration reform done. We've got evidence that our housing market would be stronger if immigrants are in a situation in which, having paid a fine, having paid back taxes, that they now have the ability to actually enter into the housing market. We've got strong evidence that our technological and research edge would be better if we get immigration reform done. We know that the Senate bill strengthens border security, puts unprecedented resources on top of the unprecedented resources I've already put in to border security. So if your main priority is border security, I think you'd want to vote for this bill. We know that the Senate bill creates a system in which employers are held accountable for when they hire undocumented workers. This is something that people say is a bad thing. I agree. Let's make sure that that system for holding employers accountable is in place. So when I hear the opposition to immigration reform, I just run through the list of things they're concerned about. I look at what the Senate bill does, and I say to myself, you know what, the Senate bill actually improves the situation on every issue that they say they're concerned about. Now, what they may argue is it doesn't solve the problem 100%. I don't know a law that solves a problem 100%. Social Security lifted millions of seniors out of poverty, but there's still some poor seniors. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act drastically reduced discrimination in America, but there's still discrimination. It doesn't make them bad laws. It just means that there are very few human problems that are 100% solvable. So, what I see right now is a strong bipartisan vote coming out of the Senate. I think that the Speaker and others have said they need to do something. And I'd urge, when they get back, to do something. Put forward a bill that has an opportunity to actually pass. It may not be precisely what's in the Senate bill. My preference would be for them to go ahead and call the Senate bill, but if they've got some additional ideas, I think the Senate's happy to consider them. And get that bill on the floor. Put it up for a vote. I am absolutely certain that the votes for the Senate bill, which strengthens border security, demands responsibility from undocumented workers to pay a fine, pay a penalty, get to the back of the line, reforms our legal immigration system, holds employers accountable. I am absolutely confident that if that bill was on the floor of the House, it would pass. So the challenge right now is not that there aren't a majority of House members, just like a majority of Senate members, who aren't prepared to support this bill. The problem is internal Republican caucus politics. And that's what the American people don't want us to be worrying about. Don't worry about your Washington politics. Solve problems. And this is one where you've actually got some pretty broad consensus. I don't know an issue where you got labor, the Chamber of Commerce, evangelicals, student groups, you name it, supportive of a bill. Let's get it done. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.
So there he is, the President of the United States, nearly an hour answering questions from 8 reporters during the course of that nearly 1-hour news conference. The President going through a wide range of issues, probably most importantly making the case for greater transparency, outlining a series of proposals to go forward and to explain the NSA surveillance program in a better way. The President made it clear he does not think that Edward Snowden is a whistleblower. He said he is not a patriot, in his words, but he did inspire, he did trigger this debate, which the President clearly believes was positive, and he outlined 4 specific steps that he's about to make. He was also very passionate in defending Obamacare, going after the Republicans, making it clear that if the Republicans had their way, he says 30 million Americans would not be eligible for affordable health care, and he's clearly indicated he's willing to make a major fight on all of these issues. We're going to have extensive coverage coming up on The Lead. Later, I'll be back 5 p.m. Eastern in the Situation Room. We have all of our reporters, all of our analysts standing by, lots to dissect. But let's turn it over right now to John Berman. He's picking up our coverage in The Lead.
Thank you so much, Wolf. I'm John Berman, filling in for Jake Tapper while he's away. The president just wrapped up his press conference, as you saw. He's expected to leave tomorrow for his week-long vacation with his family in Martha's Vineyard. In this news conference, which was 53 minutes long by my account, and he covered everything from the controversy over NSA leaker Edward Snowden, and he had some fascinating words about Mr. Snowden, to the investigation of Benghazi and his constant battle with congressional Republicans, especially over health care. We will delve into all the news and get reaction from a top Republican on the House Homeland Security Committee coming up. Let's begin right now, if we can get her, with our CNN chief White House correspondent, Jessica Yellen. Jessica joins us from the East Room, where the president just wrapped up. Jessica, as I said, a range of topics, but his statement and the thrust of what the president seemed to want to talk about were the surveillance programs, of course, that Edward Snowden shined so much light on.
And you're right, John, and not only did he make some news today, but he laid out a framework for more information to come from the administration in the next weeks, I think, with declassifying, indicating that they're going to declassify some programs. Today, what we're learning are the broad framework that sort of allows the NSA to collect their surveillance and the legal thinking behind their justifications for the surveillance. But we're going to get a lot more detail, we're told, about exactly what the government does when they're looking through emails and looking through phone records, et cetera. So I think there is more information to come. That's some big news, but boy, did they cover the range of topics. I was at the end of the press conference, and they got through most of my questions, so by the end, you could see him. He usually gets a little bit testy at the very end, so you can sometimes get the most fiery answer out of him when he's gets a little tired by then. But he seemed very subdued today, very calm. In first term, he would get much more prickly in these settings, and he just doesn't seem to get as riled up right now. It seems like not all that much is going to bother him. He did, get a little on edge over Obamacare, as you point out, but a range of issues, and that's the only touch of emotion I really saw from him, John.
And he had some words about Russian President Vladimir Putin. He talked about Putin's slouch. He looks like the bored kid at the back of the classroom. That was certainly interesting. And Jessica, as you said, perhaps the most important thing, he issued a 4-point plan to really make the surveillance program more transparent to the American people. That seems to be the biggest change, the biggest announcement to come out of this. Jessica Yellen, sit tight. We're going to come back to you in just a second. Also here with us, we have Democratic strategist Hillary Rosen, also a CNN political contributor, and Republican strategist Kevin Madden, a CNN contributor as well. Thanks, guys, so much for being with us. What struck you, Hillary, from what the president had to say?
Jessica kind of hit it at the end, which is the president today was confident. He was enthusiastic about sharing his latest thinking on the NSA leaks. And he was passionate about two things that he cares about, which is making sure that 30 million people actually get health care and that the Republicans don't succeed with these crazy threats about shutting down the government instead of giving people health care, and that he really wants to see immigration happen. I thought the president was clear today, and there was a little bit of something for everyone, particularly in that NSA speech.
All right. The president did seem to want to focus on surveillance, Kevin. The president seems to think that he already has the support of the American people on these NSA programs that they didn't even know about until June. Listen.
I'm comfortable that if the American people examined exactly what was taking place, how it was being used, what the safeguards were, that they would say, you know what, these folks are following the law and doing what they say they're doing. But it is absolutely true that with the expansion of technology, this is an area that's moving very quickly. With the revelations that have depleted public trust, that if there's some additional things that we can do to build that trust back up.
So in our last polling, 50% of Americans approved of the NSA's programs, 44% disapproved of them. That was in a recent Pew poll. So, Kevin, is the president right? Do Americans trust the NSA? Are they apathetic, or is there an atmosphere of mistrust?
Well, look, this is an issue that that is quite different in the sense that it doesn't break along the typical partisan or ideological lines that we usually see things break along here in Washington. That's why I think you have a lot of Republicans and Democrats that are somewhat supportive of the president on this NSA program. And I think that's also a reflection of where their constituents are. I think the president has a challenge mentioned two things here. The first is he mentioned that part of his reform would be Section 215 of the Patriot Act. Now, I worked at the Department of Justice when they reauthorized the Patriot Act. That is a very misunderstood and typically easily demagogued issue. So it's going to be really hard for him. It's going to be a challenge for him as he works through some of the reforms there. The second part is that he said he wants to work with Congress. The question